You've seen him before. The man who slowly disappeared from everyone's life. Not all at once. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But quietly. One day he stopped replying. Then he stopped calling. Then he stopped showing up. No fights. No arguments. No emotional goodbyes. Just silence. And people noticed. They started asking questions. What happened to him? Why did he change? Why did he disappear? Some said he became cold. Some said he became distant. Some said he became selfish. Some said he lost his emotions. But none of them knew the truth. Because men don't disappear overnight. They disappear after years of being invisible. They disappear after carrying weight no one ever noticed. They disappear after being strong for everyone while slowly breaking inside. They disappear after giving everything and receiving nothing. They disappear after realizing that no one ever really asked them how they were doing. If you've ever cut people off, if you've ever walked away without explaining yourself, if you've ever felt the urge to delete numbers, mute conversations, and rebuild your life in silence, then this story is about you. And if you've ever watched someone you cared about slowly fade away, if you've ever been confused by someone's sudden distance, if you've ever wondered why someone you once knew so well became unreachable, then this story will finally make sense. Because some men don't leave because they are broken. They leave because they finally woke up. You probably think you understand why a man cuts everyone off. You think it's anger. You think it's ego. You think it's bitterness. You think it's pride. But when a man truly disappears, when he walks away from people who once meant everything to him, it's never impulsive. It's never emotional. And it's never random. It is slow. It is calculated. It is painful. And most of the time, it is the last option he has left. Most men don't cut people off after one betrayal. They don't vanish after one disappointment. They don't isolate after one argument. They disappear after years of being taken for granted, after years of being the reliable one, after years of being the one who always showed up, after years of being the one who fixed everyone else's problems. They disappear after years of staying silent while their own needs were ignored, after years of swallowing their pain, after years of pretending they were okay when they weren't. And one day something inside them breaks, not loudly, not violently, not in front of an audience, but permanently. That's the moment he stops explaining himself. That's the moment he stops arguing. That's the moment he stops trying to be understood. Because he realizes something terrifying. No one ever really saw him. They saw what he provided. They saw what he fixed. They saw what he carried. They saw what he sacrificed. But they never saw how tired he had become. They never saw the exhaustion behind his smile. They never saw the pressure behind his calm. They never saw the loneliness behind his strength. So when he finally leaves, people are shocked. They say he changed. They say he became cold. They say he just disappeared. But what they don't realize is this. He didn't disappear. He finally chose himself. And today you're going to understand the real psychology behind that choice. The 7 psychological truths that explain why some men walk away from everyone and never look back. If this feels personal, if your chest feels heavy as you hear these words, if your mind keeps replaying memories from your past, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. Because some stories don't need to be explained. They need to be remembered. And the first truth begins with the moment a man realizes something that changes everything. He no longer recognizes himself in his own life. There is a moment that comes without warning. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't come with drama. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly. A man sits alone one night, maybe in his room, maybe in his car, maybe on his bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, he stops distracting himself. No phone, no music, no noise, just silence. And in that silence, a strange feeling rises, a discomfort he has been avoiding for years, a realization that hits him slowly, painfully, and then all at once. He looks at his life, the people around him, the routines he follows, the conversations he repeats, the role he plays every day, and something inside him whispers, "This is not who I am." At first, he tries to ignore it. He tells himself he's just tired. He tells himself he's overthinking. He tells himself this is what adulthood feels like, but the feeling doesn't go away. It follows him. It sits with him when he's alone. It speaks to him when he's quiet. It waits for him when the world goes silent. He starts noticing things he never questioned before. How different he feels around different people. How much he edits himself in conversations. How often he laughs at jokes he doesn't find funny. How often he agrees just to avoid conflict. How often he stays quiet just to keep the peace. He notices how exhausted he feels after being around certain people. Not because they are bad, not because they are cruel, but because being with them requires him to be someone he is no longer willing to be. He notices how he has been shrinking himself for years, lowering his standards, silencing his opinions, burying his emotions, all in the name of belonging. And that's when the truth begins to hurt, because he realizes that the version of himself everyone knows is not the real him. It is a character, a survival identity, a version he created to fit in, a version he built to be accepted, a version he shaped to be needed. He became what people wanted, the reliable one, the calm one, the strong one, the one who never complained, the one who never asked for help, the one who never made things uncomfortable. And people loved him for that. They praised him for that. They relied on him for that. They respected him for that. But that version of him came at a cost. It cost him his voice. It cost him his authenticity. It cost him his identity. Slowly, quietly, he disappeared inside the role. And one day he realizes something terrifying. If he keeps living this way, he will lose himself completely. That is the moment the withdrawal begins. Not suddenly, not aggressively, not dramatically, but intentionally. He starts pulling back. He stops oversharing. He stops explaining himself. He stops making himself available to everyone. People notice. They ask what's wrong. You seem different. You've changed. You're not the same anymore. And they're right. He is different because he finally sees what he was never supposed to become. And once a man sees that, he can never go back to pretending. But the awakening doesn't stop there, because as his identity begins to break apart, he starts seeing his relationships clearly for the first time. And that's when the second realization hits. The realization that hurts more than the first. He starts paying attention. Who calls when they need something? Who disappears when he needs support? Who listens when he speaks? Who talks over him? Who remembers his struggles? Who forgets them? He starts noticing the imbalance, the pattern, the truth, that most of his relationships were never built on connection. They were built on convenience. He was not valued for who he was. He was valued for what he provided. His time, his energy, his advice, his presence, his loyalty. He was the one people called in a crisis, the one they vented to, the one they leaned on, the one they depended on. But when he was tired, when he was overwhelmed, when he was breaking, they were nowhere to be found. He remembers all the nights he stayed awake listening to other people's problems, all the times he showed up when no one else would, all the moments he put his own pain aside to carry someone else's, and suddenly he sees the truth. He was never in relationships. He was in transactions. He gave, they took, he supported, they depended, he cared, they consumed. And when he finally stopped giving so much, people didn't ask if he was okay. They got offended. They called him selfish. They said he changed. They accused him of abandoning them. And that confirmed everything. Because real relationships don't collapse when you set boundaries. Only transactional ones do. That realization breaks something inside him, because it forces him to accept a painful truth. Many of the people he loved never actually loved him. They loved what he did for them. They loved how easy he made their lives. They loved the version of him that never said no. And when that version disappeared, so did their loyalty. So he lets them go. Not with anger, not with hatred, not with revenge, but with clarity, because he finally understands something most people never do. Some people were never meant to stay. They were only meant to take. And when a man sees this, when he truly understands it, his entire perception of people changes forever. And this is only the beginning. Because now comes the transformation. Now comes the death of the old self. Now comes the rise of a man who will never be the same again. For a long time, his sense of worth lived in other people's hands, in their approval, in their praise, in their recognition. He didn't realize it at first. He thought he was just being kind. He thought he was just being supportive. He thought he was just being a good man. But slowly his life became shaped around one invisible question. Am I enough for them? So he adjusted himself. He softened his opinions. He filtered his words. He held back his truth. He learned when to stay silent. He learned when to smile even when he was hurting. He became agreeable, reliable, likable, helpful, available. Because somewhere along the way, he learned that love had to be earned. So he earned it. He showed up when others disappeared. He listened when others judged. He stayed when others walked away. He carried weight that was never his. And for a while it felt good. People praised him. People appreciated him. People relied on him. He felt important. He felt needed. He felt valued. But slowly something started to feel wrong. Because the more he gave, the more they expected. The more he sacrificed, the more they demanded. The more available he became, the more invisible he felt. No matter how much he did, it was never enough. Someone was always disappointed. Someone always wanted more. Someone always needed something. And when he finally needed support, when he finally wanted to be heard, when he finally needed someone to carry him for once, there was no one. That was the moment the system broke. The moment he realized the truth. External validation is a hunger that never ends. You feed it and it grows. You starve yourself and it demands more. And the more he tried to please people, the further he drifted from himself. So he stopped. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped justifying his decisions. He stopped defending his boundaries. Because he learned something powerful. People who truly care don't need explanations. And people who don't care will twist them anyway. This was the moment he stepped into authority over his own life. He stopped living for applause. He stopped chasing approval. He stopped needing permission. His worth was no longer negotiable. And when that happens, the world reacts. People call him cold. They say he became distant. They say he changed. But he didn't change. He woke up. An awakening always comes with pain. Because that's when the betrayal surfaces. The betrayal that most men never talk about. The story they carry in silence. The wound they hide behind strength. The scar no one sees. It didn't come from a stranger. It came from someone close. Someone he trusted. Someone he defended. Someone he would have sacrificed for. A best friend. A brother. A partner. A family member. Someone he believed was loyal. And when it happened, it didn't just hurt. It shattered something inside him. Because betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It rewires your mind. It teaches you that trust is dangerous. That loyalty is rare. That closeness is a risk. It teaches you that the people you protect the most are often the ones who hurt you the deepest. And once you've been stabbed in the back by someone you would have taken a bullet for, you don't just become careful. You become selective. You stop giving everyone access. You stop assuming good intentions. You stop believing words without proof. You build walls, not because you hate people, but because you finally understand them. This is why men who cut everyone off seem guarded, distant, emotionally unavailable. Not because they don't want connection, but because they've seen what happens when you trust the wrong person. They've paid the price, and the price was too high to ever pay again. So they withdraw. They create distance. They isolate, not because they're broken, but because they are protecting what's left of themselves. And somewhere in that isolation, something unexpected happens. He realizes something most people never realize, that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who don't truly see him. Better than being in rooms where he feels invisible. Better than conversations where he isn't heard. Better than relationships where he isn't valued. Most people fear solitude. They stay in draining friendships. They tolerate shallow relationships. They accept disrespect. All because silence scares them. But men who cut everyone off cross a different threshold. They sit in the silence long enough to discover something powerful. The silence is not empty. It is honest. In solitude, he meets himself again. Not the version that performs, not the version that pretends, not the version that adjusts to be accepted. The real one, the one with his own thoughts, his own values, his own standards, his own dreams. And once a man reconnects with his authentic self, fake connection feels like suffocation. That is when solitude becomes a choice, not a punishment, not a weakness, not a failure, but a sanctuary, a place where he heals, a place where he rebuilds, a place where he becomes. And this is where the real transformation begins, because now he is no longer running from people. He is running toward himself. For most of his life, he was the strong one, the one people leaned on, the one they called in a crisis, the one who always had the answers, the one who stayed calm when everyone else fell apart. He carried that role with pride, because being needed felt like purpose, being relied on felt like value, being the solution felt like meaning. So he listened, he advised, he supported, he rescued again and again. He carried other people's problems on his shoulders. He absorbed their stress into his body. He carried their emotional chaos in his mind. He became the emotional anchor for everyone around him. And for a long time, he told himself that this was noble, that this was what a good man does, that this was what strength looks like. But slowly the weight became unbearable. He was carrying burdens that were never his. He was managing crises that were not his responsibility. He was fixing people who didn't want to change. He gave advice that was ignored. He offered solutions that were rejected. He stayed in conversations that went nowhere. And while he was busy holding everyone else together, his own life was falling apart. His dreams were waiting. His healing was waiting. His peace was waiting. Until one day he reached his limit, not in anger, not in rage, but in exhaustion. He realized a truth that changed everything. You cannot save people who refuse to save themselves. You cannot heal people who are addicted to their wounds. You cannot fix people who benefit from staying broken. Trying does not make you strong, it makes you empty. So he stopped. He stopped answering every crisis call. He stopped carrying emotional chaos that wasn't his. He stopped being everyone's therapist. He set a boundary, and people hated it. They said he changed. They said he became selfish. They said he abandoned them. But what they didn't understand was that he had been abandoning himself for years. Choosing himself was not cruelty, it was survival. And once a man chooses himself, there is no going back, because that is when the rebirth begins. Everything he went through led to this moment. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every lonely night, every painful realization. None of it was random, it was preparation. Because cutting everyone off was never about running away from people. It was about running toward himself. For the first time in his life, he stopped living for approval. He stopped living for validation. He stopped living for acceptance. He started living for truth. He shed every false identity, every mask, every version of himself built to please others. And what remained was the man he was always meant to be. A man with standards, a man with boundaries, a man with self-respect, a man with direction. He rebuilds his life slowly, intentionally, on his own terms. He chooses his relationships carefully. He guards his energy fiercely. He protects his peace unapologetically. He no longer needs a crowd to feel worthy. He no longer needs applause to feel validated. He no longer needs approval to feel complete, because he found everything he was searching for within himself. And the man who emerges from this process is unrecognizable to those who knew him before. Calmer, but stronger. Quieter, but more powerful. More isolated, but more free. He no longer chases connection. He attracts alignment. He no longer seeks belonging. He builds his own world. He no longer lives for others. He lives for purpose. This is the psychology of men who cut everyone off. Not coldness, clarity, not cruelty, self-preservation, not escape, evolution. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in this story, know this: you are not broken. You are not damaged. You are not lost. You are awakening. And awakening is always lonely at first, but it leads to a life most people never reach. A life built on truth, on strength, on self-respect. Your transformation is not a tragedy, it is your rebirth. So place your hand over your heart, take a deep breath, and say this quietly to yourself. I choose myself. I honor my journey. I trust my path. Say it again. Let it sink in. Because from this moment forward, you are no longer living for the world. You are building your own. And if this story felt like it was written about you, if you recognize yourself in this transformation, remember this. You didn't lose people. You found yourself. And sometimes that is the most powerful transformation a man can ever experience. Your story is not ending. It is just beginning.